The hospital hallway was silent, except for the rhythmic hum of fluorescent lights. A man in a wrinkled work shirt sat on a cold bench, his arm still bandaged from a recent blood donation. His name was Mark Bennett, 38, a mechanic who looked like he hadn't slept in days. He tore open the white envelope that had arrived that morning. Something from the blood bank, he thought. Probably a thank you letter. But when his eyes reached the second line, the world around him went still. Dear donor, we thought you should know, the blood you gave last week saved the life of your own child. Mark's hand trembled. His breath caught in his throat. His child. But his daughter had been gone for years. Hadn't she? The hallway blurred around him. The letter slipped from his hands and hit the floor softly. Somewhere down that hallway, a little girl laughed. A laugh that sounded hauntingly familiar. If this moment moves you already, stay with us. Because what Mark discovers next will change everything he thought he knew about loss, fate, and second chances. If you believe in stories that touch the soul, hit subscribe and stay till the end, because this one will stay with you long after it ends. Mark Bennett's days started before dawn. The world outside still slept while he tightened bolts under dim garage lights, his hands stained with grease and years of quiet struggle. It had been 4 years since his wife, Laura, left with their baby daughter, Emily. There were no arguments, no warning, just a note on the kitchen counter that said, "She deserves better." He never saw them again. Not a word, not a call, only silence, and the echo of a tiny laugh that used to fill their home. Mark kept her old toys in a box in the attic, still refusing to throw them away. Every so often he'd climb up, run a hand through the dust, and whisper, "If you ever come back, I'll be ready." That's why he started donating blood. Every month. Not for the money, not even for the free juice they gave donors, but because it made him feel like he was still doing something good for someone's child. Little did he know that someone would turn out to be his own. It was a Tuesday afternoon, ordinary, unremarkable, when Mark stopped by the donation center on his lunch break. He'd been there so many times, the nurses greeted him by name. "Back again, Mr. Bennett," the young nurse smiled. He nodded. Same arm, same veins. Just trying to help. She laughed softly. "If everyone had your heart, the world would be better." Mark smiled faintly but said nothing. He didn't tell her that every drop of blood felt like a silent apology, to the daughter he couldn't save, to the family he couldn't keep. He lay back, the needle sliding in. He stared at the ceiling as the red filled the bag, thinking, maybe this will help someone who still has hope. When it was over, he grabbed a cookie, thanked the nurse, and left. Unaware that somewhere across town, in the children's ward, a little girl was being rushed into emergency surgery. Her name was Emily Bennett, and she had just received her father's blood. A week passed. Rain poured outside the garage as Mark worked beneath a dented pickup truck, the sound of wrenches echoing through the empty shop. Then the mail arrived. Among the bills and flyers was another envelope from the blood bank. At first, he thought it was another thank you card. But this one was different. The paper trembled in his hands as he read, "Dear donor, we wanted to thank you personally. Your blood type was a perfect match for a young girl who almost didn't make it. She's stable now, because of you." Mark froze. His chest tightened. The words "young girl" stuck in his mind like a haunting echo. He looked at the letter again. There was a small handwritten note at the bottom. "The child's mother asked to meet you. Only if you're comfortable." His hands went cold. He didn't know why his heart suddenly raced, but something inside him whispered, "Go." That evening, he found himself standing outside the children's hospital, the same one where his wife had given birth years ago. The wind howled, carrying the faint chime of ambulance sirens in the distance. He almost turned back, until he saw her, a woman with tired eyes, holding a teddy bear that looked too familiar. Laura. And beside her, a small girl with curly brown hair and wide, curious eyes, just like his. Mark's breath caught. He took a step forward, but before he could speak, The little girl looked up at her mother and whispered, "Mom, that's the man from my dream." For a long moment, none of them moved. The hospital courtyard was silent, except for the sound of rain dripping from the eaves. Mark's voice cracked as he finally spoke. "Laura, is that?" "Yes," she whispered, her eyes glistening. "This is Emily." He stared at the little girl. She looked so small, wrapped in a pink jacket 2 sizes too big, clutching the same teddy bear he'd kept for years in the attic. The sight nearly brought him to his knees. Laura took a shaky breath. "She's been sick for months. The doctors said she needed a rare blood type. I never thought they'd find one. Then the nurse told me a man named Mark Bennett was the donor. I didn't believe it at first. But when I saw the name again on the paperwork," her voice broke, "I knew it was you." Mark couldn't breathe. All those lonely nights, all those donations, every drop had unknowingly been reaching for her. For this. Emily tugged gently on her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, you said Daddy was a good man." Laura knelt beside her, tears streaming. "He is, baby. He's the best man I ever knew." Mark crouched, his voice trembling. "Emily," he whispered, "I've missed every birthday, every laugh. But if you'll let me, I'd like to make up for it." The little girl studied him quietly. Then she smiled, the same crooked smile Laura used to have, and reached out her tiny hand. "I already dreamed you'd come back," she said softly. "You found me, Daddy." The world seemed to stop. Mark pulled her into his arms as Laura covered her mouth, sobbing quietly. It was as if the years apart had folded into one single heartbeat, and everything broken finally began to heal. But fate wasn't done yet, because what Laura was about to tell him next would change everything again. The hospital corridor was quiet now, the kind of silence that hums after a storm. Mark stood by the window, watching the faint sunrise stain the clouds with color. He'd just spent hours by Emily's bedside, listening to her soft breathing as she slept. Behind him, Laura's footsteps echoed. She stopped beside him, her voice low. "Mark, there's something I didn't tell you." He turned slowly. Her hands trembled as she held out a stack of papers, medical bills, eviction notices, and at the top, a final letter from the hospital. "She needs more treatment," Laura said, her voice breaking. "And I can't afford it. I tried every charity, every loan. I didn't want to find you out of pity. I just didn't know where else to go." Mark stared at the papers, the words blurring through his tears. Then he looked at her, and something in his eyes shifted, a quiet strength replacing years of guilt. Without a word, he took the papers and tore them in half. Laura gasped. "Mark!" He smiled faintly. "No more debts. No more running. You've done enough alone." A week later, the sound of laughter filled the same hospital ward that once echoed with beeping machines. Emily was sitting up, coloring in a picture of a family, 3 figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. Mark walked in wearing a crisp uniform, his old mechanic's jacket replaced by something new. On his chest was a logo, Bennett Auto and Repair, a business he started with his savings and dedicated to his daughter. Laura smiled from the doorway, tears glistening in her eyes. He turned to her. "She's the reason I found my way back. Both of you are." Later that day, as they stepped out of the hospital together, Emily squeezed both their hands. "Daddy," she said with a grin, "can we go get ice cream?" Mark laughed, the sound raw and real. "Only if you promise not to tell your mom how many scoops." Laura smiled. "She gets that from you." As they walked down the sunlit street, the same one that led them all back to each other, the camera pulls back slowly. The hospital fades into the distance. The sound of their laughter carries over the wind. Sometimes, one small act of kindness can rewrite an entire lifetime of pain. Mark didn't just save a child that day. He saved his own heart. And maybe that's what life does. It brings back the people we're meant to find when we least expect it. If this story moved you, bestie, don't let it be the last one you feel tonight. Subscribe and keep watching, because every story on SoulTwist reminds us that love always finds its way home.